Are you looking for a new math curriculum? Well, CTC Math specializes in providing online video tutorials that take a multi-sensory approach to learning. Favorably reviewed in Kathy Duffy's 102 Top Picks and the Old Schoolhouse Crew Review. The lessons are short and concise to help your children break down concepts and appreciate math in a whole new way. The lessons are taught the traditional way, not to the test. Each one of the video tutorials is taught by an internationally acclaimed teacher, Pat Murray, who is renowned for teaching math concepts in a simple, easy-to-understand way and in only a few minutes at a time. Using a multi-sensory approach, having the combination of effective graphics and animation synchronized with the voice of a friendly teacher together with practical assessment, even students who struggled with math are getting fantastic results. And the ones that were doing okay before now are doing brilliantly. Visit CTC Math today and start your free trial. That's ctcmath.com.
Hi and welcome. My name is Felice Gerwitz, and today I have a very special guest on the line. I am a proud mommy who is hosting my own daughter, Christina Gerwitz Moss. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you.
Well, I had to do a little bit of arm twisting to get Christina on, but she finally agreed, and not because you're not busy, Christina, right? So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Well, I was obviously homeschooled all my life, and I loved every minute of that. And now I am getting the privilege of beginning to homeschool my little kids. They are Emma, who is 5, Samantha, who is 4, William is 2, and our newest little one is Alex, and he is 6 months. So I've definitely been pretty busy since I've been married, and even though my little ones are little, we definitely are already loving the whole homeschool life and all our field trips and the fun things that we get to do. So yes, we have definitely been busy, and Mom has definitely kept twisting my arm until she's gotten me here. So we'll see if all the little ones behave while we do this.
Well, the first set of questions I'm going to have are going to pertain more to the writing process, and then the second part of this interview will actually talk about the books themselves. So the first thing I wanted to talk to Christina about and have her share was the fact that she, as a homeschool student, decided that she really wanted to write. And when I began my process of writing for publication for the homeschool world, that was in 1994. And then in 1995, I had my third child, and then Neil and Christina. Neil's my oldest. He was 14, and I believe Christina was 12. So when she decided to write, I already had some books out, in the world of homeschooling, and that was my Teaching Science and Having Fun, and we were working with Joel Whitlock on the Creation Science series. And so she definitely got to see a lot of hustle and bustle and what it takes to run a publishing company and write books and ship and go to conventions and all that kind of thing. So she started asking me, about writing, and we had a computer, and so I let her go to it. She told me she was going to write a book, and she liked reading, and I let her. And she doesn't remember, we do remember, but we remember differently some things. I'll preface it with that, Christina.
Okay.
But she had 80 pages when I finally took a look at what she had written, 80 pages of dialogue. And I realized that the buck stops here. I can't blame her teacher because I was her teacher and obviously had not taught her how to transition. And so she had dialogued her way throughout the story, and I was so impressed by the sheer volume of this book. And I don't know how much you remember of that process, Christina.
Well, I just remember it was well, obviously I like to talk, so, I figured, why can't they be talking about going up the stairs as they're going up the stairs? They killed two birds with one stone. So, I think some of the verbose dialogue was that, and some of it was just not having just the mechanics of being able to do it. But I definitely had the story in my mind and where I wanted it to go and what I wanted it to do, and just kind of took off in a direction. So I'm glad that we were able to rein it in a little bit.
Well, then at that point, that's what we ended up doing, is I started going through some of the process of writing fiction. And when you said, why don't we write a book or write it with me, I said to her, I said, well, I don't know how to write fiction. I had taken some courses years and years ago, but that was my problem of being too verbose and getting manuscripts back rejected in those days, having that on there. And so, and I said, well, I don't know how. And you said, well, we're homeschoolers. We can figure it out. And so we did.
Right.
We both rolled up our sleeves and proceeded on. And so as any good homeschool mom, I turned it into schoolwork. And one of the things I want you to address, Christina, and it's a little bit off topic, but it is about, being homeschooled and how you feel that it shouldn't just replicate the public or even private school setting.
I would love to talk about that because I actually have a lot of friends that are homeschooling or trying to homeschool their children, and some are doing fabulously and others are really struggling. And I feel bad for a couple of the moms that I know just recently in talking to them that are struggling, and I feel that they are trying to replicate the school setting at home, but they're getting overwhelmed. And I think part of my love of homeschooling was that I felt like I got to study the things that interest me, and I got to help pick out my books, and I got to just have opportunities that I don't think would have been presented to me if I was at school. And not that you can't find those opportunities at a school, but they're just not readily available. And writing the books is case in point. I don't think I would have had the luxury of being able to devote school time to writing a book if I was in a public or even a private school with as much flexibility as maybe some of those schools allow. They wouldn't have allowed for this and to made this part of our school. So definitely there was lots of opportunities. I felt like being homeschooled.
I always tell Christina I want to make her the poster child of homeschooling because she really has an opinion about it. And so
it's nice to be able to say that I was homeschooled. I think a lot of people, when I tell them I want to homeschool my kids, as much as my oldest is only 5, they want to, kind of try to talk me out of it sometimes. And that when I bring in with I was homeschooled, they're like, oh, okay, well then you know. And it's nice to be able to say, yeah, I do know, because I do know all of the great, opportunities and privileges that I had just because, I wasn't confined to what everybody else was doing or having to follow at their pace or, doing what, the teacher thought was best for the whole classroom, because you couldn't, a teacher of 30 kids can't focus on one kid like you can when you homeschool. So definitely.
And you were on the college track, so I do want to add that, Christina did take college prep level courses and, with the sciences and maths and all her requirements, and then we filled in with her other credits a lot of intensive writing courses and that kind of thing. And so obviously the novels that were published were a part of her, package, so to speak. When she went to college, that was part of her accomplishment. And the interesting thing, with all of that is that, you grew as an author. When we sat down to brainstorm the first set of books, Christina, do you want to discuss how we did that?
You probably remember better than me, but I remember getting our old computer paper out that was when the pages were still attached to each other. And I don't know if this is going to be dating both of us here, but I remember making a chapter of sorts timeline of where we saw the book going and what we saw happening in like a chronological order. And that, I think, is pretty much most of what I remember about coming up with what we wanted to accomplish and what we were going to say in the book. And I really enjoy, thinking back on it, I really liked that part of trying to figure out when we were going to put clues in and when we were going to talk about different things. But I don't know if there was more to it than just that.
No, that was about it. And I think that you enjoyed action, adventure, mystery, suspense. So that was our, outline. It had to have action, it had to have adventure, mystery, and suspense. And then my whole thing was, well, if the kids get in trouble, that there has to be some sort of recourse. So in the next session, we're going to talk about the books. But in book number 2, Christina conveniently allowed for the father to get hurt so that he wasn't going to be on the adventure with them, so that they had a little bit more liberty, still under adult supervision, but, a little bit more leeway to do some things. Because
we were going to pass my dad, so, it was all okay.
Well, and the thing, too, is I think what I didn't like about some of the books that Christina gave me, these were series she'd been reading, and I remember one series in particular, that girl always flopped on the bed. It was like every other chapter she was flopping on the bed, and she was thinking all these really sad thoughts, and it was an adventure about her father being missing, and so she was super sad, and it was a downer. I think you liked it because it was an ongoing series, and they gave you clues in each of the subsequent books that tied them together. But for me, as a mom, I was like, gosh, this girl needs help. She needs prayers, thinking, not that it was, this big adventure that, we're going to go on with our life, but, chapter whatever, she's, so mourning and taking out the box of trivia memories of her dad, and it was just too heartbreaking. So that was one of the things I said to Christina, that they need to be happy and fun, and so we had some of the parameters. And then talk about the characterization, because that was one of the assignments I gave you, and we do have an outline for that, for the characterization, and I will be including that in the conference bag. But it was just an outline that we put together about the characters. So tell the audience about that assignment.
That was a really interesting assignment, and something I hadn't really thought about, I don't think, until that point where we got an outline put together, and then I think I kind of went crazy with it. I'm not really sure what the outline or what the characterization form that you're going to include, but I know that we had favorite ice cream, and we just had some of these, not just characterization as in what do the characters look like, but really how they acted and why they were going to make choices and why they were going to make decisions in the books based on their personality and based on the sheet that we came up for them with. And I think that a big part of it was to look at somebody that we knew, or to look at somebody that I knew and how they acted, and kind of try to emulate in our character qualities from that person, so that when you thought about your character, you thought about, well, how would this person act in this particular situation? And I think that really helped at the beginning, especially me come up with the characters. And I think as you write, you kind of feel like your character takes on they become a person of their own, to the point where, well, of course they would say this, and this is how they would respond to this question or this situation, because they kind of have taken on their own personality, and you kind of know how they'll respond. But at the beginning, they definitely need to be fleshed out with all of these seemingly random questions that you would know about yourself, like favorite foods and like, favorite pieces, articles of clothing, or what they will always carry, or what would you always, what will they always have with them, and these kind of questions. And it's really nice that you can refer back to this list or your characterization sheet in case you don't know, or you don't want to have a favorite ice cream in one book and then come back with a different ice cream, because it's amazing when you're reading the books how in tune you become with the characters, and I'm sure readers pick up on that things, whereas you're thinking it's just a flavor of ice cream. So I think that the characterization sheets were really important and a nice way to start building your books and building your characters for future books as well.
Right. And, they also, I knew that we were onto something, especially when you did write up the characterization, because you wanted to know what those characters were thinking. Like, I remember being done with the book, which took us on average about maybe 6 months to a year to write, but then it took another year's process, and this is the part Christina hated, all the editing and getting all the comments back from people, especially if they were a little bit negative. Christina couldn't look at them. She'd just give them to me and say, "Here, Mom, I can't handle it." And so, that part took a long time, but when we were done with the book, I wanted to know what was Anna thinking, or what would Christian think about this, And so that makes the character come alive, and I just read something not that long ago by this really well-known author, and she talked about having a lot of imaginary friends as a kid. And she was saying, that her characters, were her imaginary friends grown up. And so, they were real to her. And just like, for those who, used to watch, a television series, or I'm not a TV person, but, you get attached to that character and that personality. And so that's what resonated, I think, in our books, that, that Christian did wear, it was a little bit of a tongue twister, but Christian did wear the Christian T-shirts, and he always had some, logo or slogan on his shirt that, that Christina talked about. And then, Anna had the haircut that Christina always wanted as a child and just couldn't have, that she has now as an adult. And that was, isn't that funny? And so, Anna and Christian were very loosely related to my older son, Neil, and Christina. And growing up, they were great friends. Neil, has his struggles and everything growing up. For those of you who have listened to some of our other episodes, I talk about Neil in length, but, they were always such great friends, and Neil loves Christian music, and he knows, all the lyrics, and he still, to this day, at 30, wears some shirts with Christian, emblems or sayings on them, and so I thought that was really neat that Christina did that. But also that a lot of our fans that have written in about the books will tell me that especially the boys tend to want to be like Christian. So it was really important that we gave a really good role model. And then I think it was a no-brainer, Christina, that they were homeschool children.
Right. Especially since we were writing it for the homeschool market. But yes, of course. Besides, we were able to have all the opportunities that you wouldn't have if you were in school. So yes, the kids were homeschooled.
Right. And so, and then one of the things that also helps is the continuity, that we did have a series and we decided to write a series, and the reasoning for that. And that is that series self. So while Christina was looking at this book more as a story that she told, we were looking for some sort of an angle. How would our stories be different? If it was going to be an action, adventure, mystery, and it was going to be set in the present time, would it be something that was, had some kind of historical basis? Well, that wasn't going to work because, obviously it was present day. And so because of the work I had done along with Jill Whitlock in the creation versus evolution world, we decided to add that creation science element. So we took facts that were, on both sides of the fence, both the creation world as well as the evolution world, and that was woven into the story, and that was my part, or as, Grandma said, do you want she said, oh, yes. This is my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, who read the books and bought them for the Ellicottville Library up in upstate New York where they're from. But she said, yes, the boring science part I kind of skimmed because I wanted to read Christina's story. So the majority of the story is written by Christina, and I think what makes them so wonderful is that they were written with a teenager's perspective. And I think it made the characters and the story very believable and very real.
And I think that's part of why you keep saying, oh, we should write another book. And I keep thinking, but I've moved on, and I don't feel like I can write that teenage perspective anymore. I feel like I could do little kid stuff or maybe adult stuff, but the teenage spin on it.
Well, we actually started another series, and the first part of the book, and I kind of dropped the ball on that, we were going to do a book in each of the 50 states, and it still is on the drawing board. It hasn't gotten completely erased. Yes. But the thing is that when we wrote that, the beginning of it, I thought I was going to co-author it with Christina. And I think you were soon out of college, and then you got a full-time job, and that kind of curtailed that.
I think I had 2 kids at the time. I was pregnant with Samantha.
Right. We had talked about it, and then you had started book 4, and I still have that in a file saved on my computer because that was in Honduras.
Yeah, you're right.
And Christina had won a scholarship to go to Honduras for was it 6 weeks, Christina? Do you want to talk about that very briefly?
Very briefly, it was an ethnographic study, and we were studying the people on the island of Roatan in Honduras, and we went with 10 other students from my university, and I did receive a full scholarship, and my husband, who was not my husband at the time, also got a full scholarship to go, so we thought must have been a God thing that we were both there together. And then shortly after we got back, we started dating, and then a year later we were married. And 5 years later, we have 4 children. So that's our extremely brief story. But, yes, we were going to set our 4th book in Honduras, and it just never happened. I think we needed our timeline. I think that's what it was missing was our where it was going. But yes, maybe someday.
Yes, right. And so what I was saying with that too, to backtrack, and that is that Christina's voice in the state books started to be more like Anna and Christian. So that's when I think we stopped it, and we did this whole characterization again to try to get who those. There were 3 kids in the story, and they were homeschooled, and then they had to have 2 kids were in the family, and then their cousin was coming along with them, and then the parents and what their roles were going to be, and then how we were going to have continuity through the 50 states, and have character qualities as part of the package of that, and so like I said, it's still in the works, and it's still something I think about, and we've got some ideas for that. But, it's hard when you are used to writing in one voice, or those characters have become so real that, to leave that part of it. When she began writing it, I said, you don't need me. You've done an excellent job, so I'll just play with the babies. And I think Samantha was little at the time, and she is, she's going to be 4, Christina?
She's going to be 4,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to say I was pregnant with somebody, but everybody
I think you may have. Actually, I think
in the last 5 years, I have been pregnant with somebody at one point or another. So
I think you were pregnant with Sammy, right? I think you were. But
so then it was before 4 years, Mom.
Right.
So.
Oh no! Now I'm really going to feel guilty.
You're going to be in trouble.
But one thing I want to end with this session, and that is that these books instilled in Christina a love of research, and the fact that she did take an anthropology class as a homeschool student. We did it at home, and, we ordered a video set that was taught by...
I think it was archaeology, but yes.
Right. Okay, it was archaeology. And so, and I remember the first thing out of the lady's mouth was something evolutionary, and, Christina, of course, didn't like the rest of the session based on that. But then in college, you went and you minored in anthropology because of that. Yeah. So, and those were a lot of those classes were elective. So, it was amazing how it all, kind of God brought this whole thing together with the idea for the book, and then proceeding on with 3 books in the series, and then, having you continue on with your studies on a college level with a communication major, but a minor in anthropology. And a lot of that was out of your love of writing the series.
Yes, definitely. And I think also the creation science, since that was such a big part of your books and things that were definitely talked about a lot at the house, that I think that also made the anthropology and archaeology more interesting and intriguing for me as a college student, that it was something that we had, talked extensively about and heard all the debates about and things like that. So I think that's also why that was so interesting to me and to include in our book.
Good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and making your mom happy and coming on to this broadcast with me.
No problem. I'm happy I was able to do this and that we finally squeezed in a few minutes of our time to make it happen.
Good. Well, thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Creation Science Podcast. You can find the show notes at creationsciencepodcast.com. And as always, reach out to me, Felice Gerwitz, at felice@mediaangels.com. Take care, God bless, and I hope you enjoy teaching your children and learning about the beautiful world that God created. Please share this broadcast with a friend, and thanks so much.